Hey fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on Sifted.net. Want to remind you that Sifted has switched from a monthly subscription model where you pay direct to a Patreon model. You got a menu, a lot of different choices, different tiers. There's some really cool stuff. We're actually offering a tier where you get a ticket, an admission to my E3 party, and you can meet 900 of my closest friends, and I promise you there are people there you want to meet. Now we're going to wrap you in cellophane so that you don't drool all over these people if you do sign up, and I promise if you get unruly we're going to have security boost you out of the party. But it's an opportunity to meet guys who make pretty cool games, and we're going to limit the number of tickets to just a handful. So again, if you can go on to Patreon, we're live on Patreon, and check a support level. You'll see a bunch of different options, some pretty cool stuff at the higher tiers, and some very, very bad stuff like just Pachter Factor at the very low tiers. If you're not watching on Sifted, understand. If you can't deal with it, that's cool. We're on YouTube. All I ask in return is that you follow me on Twitter and that you tell your friends what a cool dude I am. All right, let's get to our questions. From Sifted, our first question is from Freighter Lai. How long before we should expect to see a price drop on Xbox One X? What a great question. Look, I had to go to Urban Dictionary for this one, but there's a term in the Urban Dictionary called Xbots. And an Xbot is a person who is fanatically and blindly loyal to all things Microsoft and will buy anything with the Xbox logo and will insult anybody who doesn't feel the same way they do. So there aren't that many of those guys. Let's pretend there's a million of them. And I don't care. The Xbox One X could be $5,000. Those million guys would buy it no matter what it costs. So they're paying full price. When Microsoft runs out of them, then you got to think about the more rational consumer who says, shoot, I would really like this thing. It is the most powerful console ever, but it's 500 bucks. And in order to get the full value out of it, I have to upgrade my TV. And whatever you think about 4K TVs, I mean, you can get a decent one for $600 or $700, but now I'm up to $1,200 in spend, and there's really no reason to buy a 4K TV. You might have one because you just future-proofed on your last TV purchase, but honestly, I haven't bought a TV in 2 years, and I buy TVs when my old ones burn out, and I haven't had one burn out in 2 years. So I don't have a 4K TV. I have like 8 1080p TVs, no 4K. So I'd say the appeal at 500 bucks is pretty low. It's not something you have to have, it's something it's nice to have. So some people will pay for the label, some people will not. And I think the Xbox One X is like that. So to answer your question, when Microsoft sees sales slow, they'll be tempted to cut price. Now, we had a question last week about whether this thing was sold at a profit or not. I don't think it is. I think it's at break even at best. So I think Microsoft will not cut the price until they get the component manufacturing costs down to where it's low enough that they can afford to cut the price. So I expect price cuts in $50 increments on this thing, not $100 increments. So my prediction, Christmas of 18, $450. Now the pressure is going to come on if Sony cuts the PS4 Pro price. If Sony says PS4 Pro, which is HDR, not 4K, and again, if you don't have a 4K TV, you don't actually care. If they cut that price to $299, that puts the pressure on Microsoft. If Sony cuts the PS4 Pro price to something really meaningfully lower, like $299, anytime before that, I think Microsoft's got some pressure. Right now, nobody's buying a PS4 Pro. Ask yourself why. Because it's at least 100 bucks more expensive than the PS4, and it's actually more like 150. So look, the price differential is the reason that people select the regular PS4 Slim, and the price differential between an Xbox One X and an Xbox One S is literally about $250. I mean, it's $200 nominally, but the Xbox One S is $249 a lot. So I think that Microsoft's going to see slow sales. I've said this kind of repeatedly. I think the only early buyers are Xbots, and God bless you, Xbots. You're blindly faithful to your brand because it's a great brand. I'm cool with that. To me, being an Xbot is like, being a UCLA fan. I'm a UCLA fan. I live in USC Central, but UCLA. Our next question from Sifted from Mick Eaton. Do you think Ninja Theory's AAA indie approach to Hellblade will have a meaningful impact on game development going forward? I am amazed at what it achieved. I don't think so. So it's a tough question. There are a lot of inexpensively produced games that do really well. The one that I think everybody's familiar with is PlayerUnknown Battleground. So that game, there's no chance that game cost any more than Hellblade to make. It's a simple game. I mean, if you play it, I would say H1Z1, same thing. It's like a simple game, but the concept that you have shrinking territory and players are put together and last man standing, simple, but play the game. I mean, there's tons to do. I mean, it's a pretty rich game. So I don't think those guys called themselves AAA indies. They were definitely indies. But the games have success. I think you'll see more and more of those type of games. I don't know that you're going to get AAA publishers or AAA developers who are going to make inexpensive games, because the truth is they don't have to. So if you think you're going to generate $250 or $500 million in game sales, what's the difference between spending $10 million and $50 million? And I know that the difference between 10 and 50 is 40. But the point is, if you really think you're going to do that, why not add some production values and spend a little more money? So I don't think it's going to change game development going forward. I think you'll get a mix of indie games and AAA games. I think you'll get AAA publishers like, I guess they're now called Ghost Story Games, the former Irrational, working on stuff. We don't know what they're working on, but it's the former guys who made BioShock Infinite, so clearly AAA, and they're not spending a lot of money. So I think that's already happened. I just think these guys got publicity for doing something that has already existed. As far as impact, unless somebody has a breakthrough where they make 90% profit, I don't think it's a model that the publishers are going to emulate. And the analogy is to movies. If you think about movies back 20 years ago, there were a lot of small movies. So think about Rob Lowe as an actor at every movie he's ever been in. He was in romantic comedies and the budgets were very small, and the movies would do $30 million in box office or something, and they make a $10 million movie and they made money. Well, Rob Lowe was asked recently why he's only doing TV, and he said, because nobody asked me to do movies anymore. And it's not because the guy's ugly, he's still a handsome, great guy, he's hilarious. It's because budgets for movies got huge and there are fewer made. And now the studios want to make big bet, big proposition, $100 million production budget, and they need to do $200 or $300 million in box office to make money. And that's what's going on. So the game developers are doing the same thing. The guys who swing back to small, I think they have the playing field all to themselves. Activision is not going to make a small game like that. Just not going to happen. Take-Two might, because they have guys, in their mix, like Ghost Story, like Firaxis. I mean, they really might, because Take-Two, I think, has a slightly more entrepreneurial culture. But I don't see this trend actually thriving. I think you'll get the occasional big success like Hellblade or PUBG or Lawbreakers. But I don't think that there will be enough of them for any of the publishers to try the model. Okay, our next question, fellow babies, comes from Sifted from Julian Reed 77. How much long-term trouble, if any, does the AAA market face from people sticking with games like Rainbow Six Siege, Overwatch, GTA Online for years? Do games as a service offset annual releases in terms of net profit accrued versus initial investment? The market is in trouble, at least at the retail level, because of this. So there used to be games made that were single player. You'd buy a game, you'd finish it in 8 or 10 or 30 hours, depending on how good you were, and then you'd move on to the next game. And I remember that, the big exception to that was a game like Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, say, that would take you 100 hours or 200 hours and you might still not finish it. And for me, Fallout 3, I probably had 200 hours in that. But single player migrated into multiplayer. Multiplayer has a factor that's missing from single player completely, which is revenge. And so you are trying to show off. For some odd reason in Overwatch, you're going to dress up your character. I'm not really sure why people do it, but they do it. You're showing off. You're showing off that you have the money or whatever. And in GTA Online, you want that meth lab badly. You're going to spend whatever it takes. So, the issue with those games is they engage the player longer, as you correctly point out. And so we've gone from single player experience, you're done with the game in a month at the most, to multiplayer experience with stuff to do and stuff to buy and stuff to spend where you never finish. And that's a problem. So it doesn't hurt them, it hurts everybody else's game sales, because everybody else has games that are trying to compete for that audience. So the answer is, it's a trade-off. And the guy who sells you the game used to make 60 bucks, and then you'd move on to another game. If it was from the same maker, so if you put down Rainbow Six and bought Assassin's Creed or bought Ghost Recon, then Ubisoft's totally happy. But if you put down Rainbow Six and bought Battlefield, then Ubisoft's not so happy. So they want to keep you engaged so they can keep selling you stuff in the game. And so the guy whose game you're playing loves that you stay and that you never quit. The guy whose game you're not buying is pissed. And all you have to do is look at MPD numbers and you can see game sales are down every single month. They just are. It's not all digital downloads. People are buying fewer games and they're playing them longer. Look at the publishers' revenues and they're all up every single quarter. How is that possible? Because the last few publishers are actually selling more stuff, including all these microtransactions. So what's the consequence of that? Well, the consequence is Midway is no longer a company, THQ is no longer a company, Acclaim, Atari. Okay, our last question this week from Sifted from the Jubenheim of Light. Love that name. Do you think Nintendo should switch to a subscription model for playing its legacy games? Nintendo has perhaps the greatest library of first-party titles and is in the best position to benefit from this. So why does it stick to the outdated model of selling games at a fixed price? Does anybody know how profitable the eShop is? Yeah, I actually suggested this a long time ago. And I don't think they will do it. But I think that their mobile strategy should be what you describe. I think that they could charge 10 bucks a month and give you access to 200 or 300 or 500 games that were made for the Game Boy Advance and the DS and the 3DS. And I think you would have people in heaven if they could play unlimited Nintendo games on their phone or on their tablet for 10 bucks a month. And frankly, I think you would get literally 20 to 50 million people paying them 10 bucks a month. So if Netflix can get 100 million subscribers to watch movies, old movies and new TV, Nintendo could get 20 million paying the same amount to play Nintendo games. Easy. And so you're talking about real money at not very much cost. So I think that would be smart. I think that they could also make all those games for mobile and just sell them. The problem with Nintendo as a mobile game maker is that mobile has migrated to a free-to-play model, and free-to-play games have what's called a balanced economy, where you are incentivized to acquire things in the game, and you can either do that by spending a lot of time and putting in a lot of effort, or by spending a lot of money. And so people with more time than money put the time in, and people with more money than time put the money in. But the players have to feel like it's a fair trade-off and that someone's not buying their way to prosperity. So the balance is the hard part. None of the Nintendo games work that way. I mean, we can argue about whether their existing mobile offerings do. Most of their games, their existing portfolio games, are like Super Mario Run, which flopped as a paid download. So I agree with you. if Nintendo would take 200 games, you know, immediately, and then add 100 a year going forward until they get their 1,500 DS games and 3DS games onto a subscription model, I think tens of millions of people would pay them $10 a month, and they would make just oodles and oodles of profit. But with that said, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Kimishima doesn't watch the Pachter Factor. I'm not sure if he speaks English, and I don't think that if he doesn't speak English, I don't think his interpreter is going to tell him what I said. I don't think they're looking for advice from me, and they're certainly not looking for advice from you. So my bias is this isn't going to happen, but it's a nice theoretical argument. Thanks for joining us this week on Pachter Factor. As I said in the intro, Sifted has migrated to a Patreon model. There is a menu of options for you. You can pay a pittance and just watch the Pachter Factor, or you can pay more, and there are plenty of premium offerings, including an ultra package that gets you an invite to my E3 party. I'm telling you, it's actually worth it. You really should consider doing that. It's a cool party. And you will meet all of your faves, including me. I'll even give you an autograph. In any case, I don't benefit from this. I'm just doing this for shits and giggles. It is all to keep Sifted afloat so they can afford to keep filming Pachter Factor. And I love Shane. He has been supportive of me for many, many years. I want to support him now, and I would love to see you guys support him as well. So please check out Patreon and look for Sifted under the Patreon listings and figure out if there's a level that you can be a sustaining member. We'd appreciate it. With that, if you're not watching on Sifted and you're watching on YouTube, you have to follow me on Twitter @Michael Pachter. Thank you for joining us.